Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to kick it off at 8.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the Lunch and Learn today on managing fire and smoke barriers in today's healthcare environment. Just going over a few housekeeping items before we start. Today's webinar is sponsored by STI FireStop. The webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to Ashley On Demand Learning page. All participants line are muted. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type in a chat box and send it to the panelists. And Q&A will start once the presentation is over. Today's webinar, our presenter is Kelly Mason, Director of Healthcare Partnership from Specified Technology Incorporated. Kelly, would you like to kick it off?
Yeah, thank you, Son. I appreciate it. First of all, I want to thank AHA and Ashley for allowing me to speak to you today. And I want to thank all of you for taking some time out of your day to look at some of these possible best practices. So we'll just kick that off. Again, my name is Kelly Mason. I see a lot of familiar names here that are attending, and I handle the healthcare initiative for STI. STI being a large provider of fire stopping materials as a manufacturer. All the applications you see on the screen, we specialize in from new construction, from the outer envelope to all the inside, and then pre-existing space. And as you see in the middle of the page, curtain wall designs. Curtain wall designs for us is a major piece of business that requires a lot of technique, and there's so many different applications for curtain wall applications. Those of you that are in the construction side of the business, there are some huge requirements for how you fire stop those types of things. Construction joints are pretty typical in all construction. Obviously, we have a lot of movement there. We don't use the same types of materials that we typically use for penetrations, even though sometimes there is a misuse there. We'll talk a little bit about that. To the far right, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing piece of this is obviously what, especially in pre-existing space, that we're dealing with on a regular basis. But the one to the far left, cable management, I think all of us would agree is, as the building is opened and starts to function and you start to move patients in and out, there's just so much going on with cable, a lot of moves, adds, and changes. So we'll dive into that process a little bit today as well. I won't have time to get into all the things that STI has to do, but we're going to talk about some of the options that might make your life a little easier out in the field. So in the world above the ceiling tiles, out of sight, out of mind. We hear that all too often. And while you see these types of pictures, I've got tons and tons of these types of pictures. The one in the center shows a conduit passing through a block wall assembly. And, you know, nowhere in any requirement does it state that the opening has to be perfectly round when you're making a pipe penetration. But it does state that you have to have, there are parameters associated with the space between the outer diameter of that penetration and the farthest point of that opening. So we call it the annular space. And there are requirements within that UL tested assembly, which we'll dive into a little bit, that give you a little bit of wiggle room, mins and maxes. The big problem here is that before that electrician could get back to fire stop his conduit, the cable contractor decided to run cable through that same opening. That created a new dynamic because now we have combustible materials within that opening. Not to say that we can't fire stop that, but is that really what's good for the owner, right, for the end user? See this all too often, but it does change the dynamic. What you're going to find is red fire stop material does not fix everything. And you can see the one on the left and right. The one on the left, just a giant hammer hole, no regard for fire stop whatsoever, creates a bit of an issue. Drywall mud on the right is not a fire stopping application. In a non-rated wall where you're just simply trying to restrict the passage of smoke, that might be acceptable. And you can see in the sleeve, there was no regard for fire stop there as well. Overloaded sleeves. We're going to talk a little bit about this today. We get a lot of questions about this because nowhere in the codes does it state that you cannot, there is no cable load discussion in the code. Where it comes into play is that no manufacturer of fire stopping material that is regulated by code has anybody been able to pass over 48% cable load using conventional method, where you're just using caulks or putties or something like that. 48% is the largest UL system right now using those types of methods. but we see over and over and over again where if there's room, I'm going to put a cable in it. And it doesn't matter how much red you put around it, there's no system for that. So creates issues. Drywall mud, we already talked a little bit, about this aspect. In this particular case, this was a fairly new construction project. The facility asked his personnel to go out into the field, find the cracks in the drywall and seal it with red fire stop sealant. Well, that's not a UL system at all, and a state fire marshal is the one that actually found this, and it ended up being a large contract to go in and repair because the original contract the original inspection didn't call for fire stopping applications. Tested rubber mats. I don't know of any of these that actually are tested. Again, theoretically in a smoke wall, I guess you could use this as a restriction for smoke, but it's amazing some of the things we see in the field sometimes that people have used to try to seal around penetrations. Even when some people have made efforts, as you see on the left-hand side, the original flat cabling you see there, someone had fire stopped that, but the next guy in with the giant bundle of white cables dug that out and probably exceeded the cable load requirement along without putting fire stop back in the openings. And data closets, those sleeves that run along the floor line right against the wall in your data closets, there are UL system requirements that the UL system will provide, and if you're not meeting those, it doesn't matter what you do, they will not stop fire and smoke during, in a tested assembly. Scab patching, we see a lot of this in the field. To the layman who may not fully understand what this is like, it would maybe make sense that if the drywall assembly, why can't I just stick a piece of drywall over the top of that? The issue being is that, in the building of a UL 400 series wall by the Gypboard Association, patching that wall does not look anything like this. And as you can see, there's 3 or 4 screws in place. They've taken some fire stop sealant, I assume, and mudded the back of that and sealed over that. They simply have basically a smoke seal there at best. No systems will withstand that in a fire test will withstand a 2-hour, even a 1-hour burn. So scab patching is a huge problem, and we've got some systems that can deal with this application, but we see this often. And the next picture will show you just what I'm talking about. This is Scab Patch City here, and I see this kind of thing a lot. The problem is in a fire, in an actual burn, when we burn them in the lab, this would last maybe 10 minutes. Mixing of manufacturers, we hear this all the time. I know you guys are probably tired of hearing it, but it still happens, and it's probably because there's no standard in place and different contractors are coming in the building. Everybody's carrying their recipe of fire stop. They're mixing them together. Even though this looks perfectly sealed to me, the problem is that everybody's recipe is a little bit different. They haven't been tested together, and it's a giant red flag for inspection. So you want to make sure if you see those kind of things, you want to standardize on a specific type of product and make sure that your contractors coming in the building are also adhering to that. Just a big mess. And in this particular case, we've got drywall mud associated with many things. Regardless, you can see that there's not a managerial approach here. It's just a big mess. Lots of pictures like this out there. So the UL system must meet the application. The rating of the barrier, this all goes, it seems like it should go without saying, but the rating of the barrier is important. The type of barrier is important. Is it a drywall assembly? Is it a block wall assembly? Is it a deck? Is it a fluted deck? There's so many variables to that to be able to pick a proper UL assembly. Proper penetrating item. What works for a cable penetration may not work for an insulated pipe or a conduit. Angular space requirements. We see this mistake happening often where maybe an apprentice is the one that's core drilling the opening. He drills a 10-inch hole for a 1-inch pipe. That creates a huge problem for whoever has to come back and repair that and put a fire stop application. It's just simply going to mean it's going to be a giant overbuild to try to bring that rating back. So as you can see, it is more than just red caulk out there. UL systems, every manufacturer of fire stopping material has hundreds of these, and we have to test to a strict criteria, 2,000 degrees. It's tested. We test for smoke at ambient temperature and then again at 400. There's a lot of things going on. So it's amazing to me how when I'm in a training and I have the contracting group and I hold up a picture of the UL system and say, how many of you have seen one of these? And the blank look that comes. Well, we use the red sealant, it has UL in the tube. Problem is nobody's product is rated on its own. It's part of a component of a system. So, you know, making sure that you have a base set of systems that in your facility that you're utilizing, or if you're a general contractor that you're requiring on that new project, is important. You know, on a new project aspect of it, a contractor that's coming in and has been awarded that project has to provide a UL system submittal packet that is stamped by the architect as approved. My question to you that are on the call today that are running a facility, are you asking that same requirement of the contractor when he walks into your building? I want to see the UL system submittal that you're going to use to bring my barrier back to its rating once you penetrated it. You're not asking the contractor to do anything that he hasn't done before, that he's not required to do on every other project. You should be asking for that as well. And what we're trying to provide in this test is many things, and this is a short list. It's colored by numbers, if you will, but as you can see, the F ratings, the fire ratings, you know, we have some tests that will go up to 4-hour ratings, but that doesn't mean that a 1-hour assembly would work in that same application. We also test for T ratings. All manufacturers have to test to the same criteria. We're trying to find out how fast the cold side of that assembly reaches 325 or 345, and then we added the ambient temperature. We're looking for that 451 Fahrenheit. So, which would, you know, basically ignite a chair on the other side of the wall if you had a metal pipe maybe passing through. We also test for the air leakage ratings. Very, very important. It's important to note that nothing is smoke tight. For the most part, 99% of what you find out there will have some bit of leakage, but it's much, much less than the door in the same wall or even the plug box in the wall. But the point being is that these tests are all put out for a reason. We've burned them. We've tested them in probably a heavier criteria than what would happen in the real world. So that's why that's why it's so important to try to adhere to that test assembly. And as you can see in the UL system, we give, you know, applications as to the type of wall applications we're dealing with. In this particular application, a metallic sleeve is optional. Some parts of the country require metallic sleeves in the wall assemblies. Some construction requires that. We leave this open. It's up to the criteria of the project itself. And then we also, what's important to note that, for instance, STI has 1,400 and some change in UL system testing. That doesn't mean you have to have a UL system for everything that passes through a wall. This particular test, if you see in 2A, steel pipe 36 inches, that means everything below 36 inches in that same type of pipe is acceptable. So this one test to a plumber would probably be their #1 assembly, because it would probably take care of many of the pipes that they would be running, as well as the electrician. You can see we also have conduit and then copper tubing as well. So we test the most vulnerable, and then everything below that is a given. So competent installations, you know, we need to know the role of the barrier. I know that you are required to mark your barriers every so many feet. With 1 hour, 2 hour smoke barrier, that kind of thing. But we do know that barriers are forever changing due to new requirements and code changes. But, you know, how barriers are compromised. It's very, very important that you put some sort of a standard in place that will reference. If it's cable, you may not want sealant around cable. Why would that be a problem? If sealant is around cable, and we know just by, you know, past experience that the cable contractor, if he sees room, he's going to try to dig that out and run a cable through that opening. That could leave a room for, maybe him damaging the cable by digging that out, those kind of things. If you know it's an area that's vulnerable to moves, adds, and changes, then you probably want to use something that's, you know, removable, re-enterable, those kind of things. As well as if it's a head of wall design. You've got to be very careful there. There are very few systems where you can use an intumescent red sealant at top of wall, and it's based on the movement process. You know, a lot of those are static, or they're just compress only, so they don't extend back once the floor it moves back. So again, you know, having the right system for the right approach is very, very important. I talked a little bit about standard operating practice. if you don't have an SOP in place, I highly suggest that you put one in place. We have one that's been a kind of a gold standard for many of our facilities for a long, long time. It's very well written. It's really not based around product. It's more based around procedural requirements, performance requirements, and those submittal requirements that I talked about. All very, very important. But in my history with using this type of application or this type of document, this makes expectations very, very clear, and I would suggest this as a bid document. So if a contractor's coming into your facility and he's simply going to run cable, or you're moving an air exchange unit, whatever it is, he has to read that, sign that, yes, I fully understand what I am supposed to do and what's required of me when I enter into the building as it relates to barriers. In that SOP that I just showed you, and I'd be glad to share that with any of you on the call, in red it says, due to the critical nature of these life safety systems, failure to provide fire stop installations in compliance with this SOP is called for contract termination. You know, that kind of says it all, doesn't it? So a good SOP program, well, listen, we're not going to be able to eliminate everything, but I think this would help. It has helped in many facilities that I work in, and again, I can share that document with you if you wish. Let's talk a little bit about specifications. Not all projects in your facility require an architectural presence, but it's important to note for the general contracting people that are on the line, and even for a project within your facility that may require an architectural presence, the specifications for fire stop have always been in what we call Division 7. Division 7 is not where a plumber, an electrician, a data communication contractor, an HVAC contractor, they do not live in that division. So we're requiring for the fire stopping, if you're asking them to fire stop their own penetrations, for them to go to a division in the spec book that they don't typically live in. So we took that a step further. We have written the specifications for each individual subtrade. So if you're about to embark on a project, I would suggest you getting with me on that. I can provide you with those individual specifications. They're very well written, and they talk about the specific products to those specific types of applications. Again, it might help when the building's handed over, the project's handed over to you, to eliminate some real issues up front. So this is what I would say would be a good procedural requirement for anyone that's going to enter into a barrier or do work within your facility. I would say that that person would have to obtain your standard operating practice, obtain prints detailing rated construction. It kind of goes without saying, but you'd be surprised how often it doesn't happen. They just walk up to the wall and go, I think this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm not sure what the rating is, but I got to put this cable through it. Obtain manufacturer's application guide. If STI happens to be the product of choice, then making sure that they have the right application guide for that. Fit level certification. I haven't talked about that yet, but I will get into that in just a second. That's a high level of training that we designed for healthcare. And we would suggest that anyone in the SOP, it states, would have to have that level of certification. Prepare itemized schedule of penetrations. Goes without saying. I want to know if I'm running this facility, what penetrations are you making? And the next bullet point, select UL systems. That's that submittal packet I talked about. So when maybe an inspector comes into the building and he asks the question, what product are you using? What systems are you using? You can provide him with that process. These are the systems, these are the projects, these are the things that are going on in my building, and you have those submittal packets handy. Again, you're not asking that contractor to do anything he's not already doing on every other project out there. So something, suggested. Submittal of UL systems. I think we maybe talked about this enough, but if any of you need help with submittals, what I like to do is you call me in on a project, and even if there's a job trailer out, out in the parking lot, I will come in, I will take a look at what's going on, who the contractors are, how you've chosen to deal with the fire stopping, and I will build those submittals. We have 75 people in the field that will build those submittals for you to ensure that you get the most cost-effective assembly. Not what's good for the installer, but what's good for the client, for yourself. So keep that in mind as we move through that process. This is one that we've done on a couple of different occasions, and what you see here, kind of hard to read that, but what you're looking at is a short schedule of systems based on the contractor. Each color represents a specific contractor. So blue would be your plumber, and as you can see there's 10 systems. So I told you I have over 1,400 on my own. Rather than have him go through that book and try to select those systems, we're going to try to make it even easier. I'm going to give you a short list of systems. This could be used. I'm doing this with many facilities right now where this is their system base. If a contractor comes into the building and he doesn't see anything on this short list of systems that fits what he's doing, he gets permission. He makes a phone call to the facility director, you know, the compliance officer, or myself, and says, hey, you didn't cover this one. We can always add it to the list, but it's a great way to have a short list of systems, and that's something you would also have for your inspection, your in-house inspection. Now we're only focusing in on several systems for that building. So again, just an idea, something we can provide to you. Each color represents an individual trade, and we can do this many different ways. But again, it's documentation for inspection and for your own in-house inspection. Penetrating permit form. I know many of you use a permitting process, but what is troubling here is that the permitting process, while it is very important, and I totally agree with it, it's not a closeout. So the permit form basically says who I am, where I'm going to be working in the building. Your closeout should be considered to be maybe a worksheet of what has been performed. So as that work is being performed, he's putting on a sheet that says ABC Contracting, this is the date, this is where I'm at in the building, this is the UL system number that I'm utilizing. That's handed back into you as maybe an inspection sheet. That would be stapled once that inspection's done to that original permit form, and then that could be maybe closer to a closeout. Now, I'm showing you a 3-ring binder way of dealing with these things. I'm going to enlighten you on a new system that we have, an app-driven program that would do the same thing, but this process is being used by many facilities, and it works well. It's just making sure, it's accountability as well. If I've got to sign my work, put my name on it, I'm probably going to, take the time to do it per that SOP requirement. And then labeling on walls. This is nothing new, but there's still a lot of facilities out there that maybe don't take it to this point. What I like about labeling the wall, again, it's heavy accountability. Now I'm going to put my name on my, on my penetration on my application. When I did it, the UL system number, and also if inspection's in the building with one of your personnel, you may not be the person that installed that application. So while your guys are good, they may not know every single UL system, in the building. It would be on the wall for the inspector to be able to look at. Then you could go back to that short list of systems that I would provide you and say, it says WL 1079. Here it is right here on the book. Here's the picture. Everything looks kosher. Let's move on. So we talked a little bit about the training process. The fit level training program that we talked about, FireStop installer instructional training, was designed several years ago. Been upgraded many times, but it was designed several years ago by healthcare professionals, consultants in the industry that focuses in strictly on healthcare. It's become a gold standard at many of our facilities out there, and this is not an hour and a piece of pizza and you're certified. This is much more in depth. It's probably going to take us 2.5 to 3 hours. It's a 50-question test. The person that's going through that application would get a card and a certificate. At any given time, we keep a running log of your hospital and who has been trained for your facility. For instance, if you were to go be walking down the hallway and you see somebody standing on a ladder and he doesn't have his permit or whatever with him, and you say, well, let me see your fit level certification card. He says, I don't know, the dog ate my homework. You could actually pick up the phone, call our coordinator, and say, I need to know if Jeff Johnson's been through that training, and you would get a yes or no answer on that. So we take this pretty seriously. We also have a Fit Level 2 training, which is 2 days. That is done at our site in Somerville, New Jersey. We actually take you through an actual UL burn test. And what you'll find when you come to those, we only do 5 of those a year, and we fill the room, and you'll have people from all around the world that come in for that. So these are available to you. The Fit Level 1 is what we bring to you, to your facility and your contracting and your in-house personnel. So talk a little bit about, proper installations. I don't have a whole lot of time to get into great depth here, but, again, when you're dealing with a UL system, there are some simple requirements that sometimes we see that may be misunderstood, I guess. So, for instance, in a wall applications, in most cases, wall applications are done from both sides. And you might ask, why do we do that? Well, the fire side of a wall application is sacrificial. So in the burn, the fire side falls apart. It's that cold side that we're banking on to hold that together. So if you're doing only one side, maybe because the doctor is occupied the other side and you can't disturb them, that could create an issue. Basically, all you're going to have there is a smoke rating at best. Now, we can design applications where we can do it from one side, but we're still trying to achieve that two-sided type application. On the other hand, floors typically are done from the top down. We do have some bottom-up systems where maybe you can't access the top, but there's really no need, with the exception of maybe PVC, that you'd have to do both sides. I was just at a facility recently where we were looking at the top side. We walked down, and I happened to look up, new construction, and they had done the bottoms too. So the cost associated with that was doubled. And I said, why did you do that? And just a shrug of shoulders. I don't know. That's what the fire stop guy did. So be careful with that. There's no need to do both sides of that. Obviously a misunderstanding. Now, again, there are a few exceptions to that rule, but for the most part. Through penetrations, you need to know, is there combustibles involved? Is there movement needed? We already talked a little bit about this. You know, obviously combustibles being insulated pipes, cable, those kind of things. Some of you on this call are probably in a seismic area where there's a requirement for sprinkler pipe to be allowed to move or shimmy during an event. There's requirements for actual space around those vertical sprinkler pipes, and using a product that would allow for movement, like a silicone type product. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner there, you see PVC. That's a fire-rated polypropylene. That doesn't mean it won't burn. It just means that there's a skin that's going to buy us some time. But when it goes, it's a toxic fume that's omitted. But not a lot of PVC in healthcare, but maybe in some of your lab areas you would see some of these types of applications. Composite sheet. I talked a little bit about how do we deal with some of those scab patch designs. This is a great product for those types of applications. We've got several tests for these. Theoretically, that's a re-enterable design. You could take those Tapcons out and re-enter that cable tray if you wanted to. I just wanted to show you this because for large irregular openings, this is a big sheet good that can be manipulated and put into place. It also has an intumescent capability to it, and it's one of the only ones in the arena that can be cut with 10 steps. So easily, manipulated in the field, if you will. So let's talk about high traffic openings. Cable installations. As a matter of fact, that cable picture on the bottom right, I took that last week. As you can see, there's a sleeve in all that mess. There's actually several of them, but they're 100% overloaded. But we'll talk a little bit about, the issues with cable applications in particular, and maybe some options for you that may work best. Now, SCI makes a product called a grommet. I don't know if those of you that may have used it. If you haven't seen it, it's a two-piece product that snaps together around cables. We're talking a small application, one, maybe up to 2 or 3 cables, can be snapped and popped into the drywall assembly. It's a 2-hour application. For cable guys, this is a great product because they don't like using the sealant. So this just gives them a device, a way to deal with small openings. Great product for dealing with some of that type of thing. Traditional methods, in smaller openings, maybe a conduit sleeve. What you see on the left-hand side is putty. Our putty application is a great way to deal with, maybe areas where there's going to be a little bit of movement. You're not too worried about it. You're not worried about exceeding that 48% cable load, those kinds of things. And you see around the actual conduit itself, that's the intumescent sealant. So our product is called SSS. It's an intumescent, 2-stage intumescent, which means it starts to expand at a lower rate, around 200, and again at 350, which is where all other products start to move. The one on the right, pillows. There's pillows, there's bricks. There's a lot of different ways to deal with that. The premise behind these types of applications is that you can slide a pillow out of place, run more cable, and put those pillows back into place. They're friction fit. Remember I said both sides of a wall. They're 9 inches in length, so they're an easy application. The problem is are they putting them back like they're supposed to? Highly intumescent will expand greatly as all that conduit starts to melt out. So lots of different applications for those types. Maintenance-free device. So our product is called EasyPath. Probably most of you know of this product. There's a lot of variables to the EasyPath product line. You can see it can be gang. There's multiple sizes. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the capabilities of this product. Not going to be able to get into all of them today. The biggest thing being is that the product can be 100% empty. or 100% full, it doesn't matter. So if you know it's in an area where you're going to have a lot of moves, adds, and changes, then you would maybe apply these maybe a couple above a fire door, maybe coming out of a communication closet. As you can see in the right-hand picture, floor applications where we've stuck them in the floor line, and you can see that some of them are completely empty. You even see the blue, the Smurf tubing there. That product is a high air-based PVC, so it means it burns very quickly. It's just a great way to run cable, but the product is so intumescent it will expand and close that off. And then, you know, there's no requirement to manipulate the product whatsoever. So for future-proofing a building, whether it's new construction or as you're moving forward, you're trying to close out overloaded sleeve applications, you put these in the wall assembly, and you may buy yourself years of expansion to be able to use that process. And then the rule in the SOP is anytime you enter into if you're a cable contractor, everything you do, you're going to run that through an orange box, right? And again, you don't just have to take our word for it. UL did an evaluation report of our product line, and as you can see, based on their letter, and I'd be glad to share that letter with you in detail, it basically says that it meets all requirements, therefore, therefore appending it from an inspection where you're having to deal with mechanical movement. So this product, once it's in the wall, it's an easy inspection. You just look up and you don't have to decide, did they close it? Did they stuff it? Did they do anything to it? It's over. I took this picture of a facility in the Midwest, and I wanted to just share it with you. The picture on the left-hand side was obviously a couple of conduit sleeves through in a data communication closet. This particular facility director was very happy about the fact that he had spent, you know, a fair amount of dollars getting all these repaired, and I asked him, could you please take me in and show me one of your data closets? So with great pride, he opened the door, and he saw that, as you can see on the one on the left-hand side, there's a mixture of products there, and somebody had dug out product on the right-hand side. This had only been repaired a month previous. So he was not very happy, and he said, how do I fix this once and for all? So what you're seeing on the right is that same application. That's called a grid system. So you can see the bank of 4 EZ-Path in the floor assembly, and then there's a blank that can be taken out and install a new module as your building requirements grow. So keep that in mind for some of your data closets, and you won't have to worry about them anymore. Not to mention the fact that you can install much more cable in a much more concentrated area if you're not dealing with sleeve applications in the 48% cable rule. This is a product. This is a process that we used on many facilities where maybe we have overloaded cable trays or sleeves, and there's a giant hole in the wall. This product could, again, this is composite sheet, would be utilized to seal that opening and then run EZ-Path right through it. So in combination, these two are tested together. Cable pulls. So if we're very, very careful about how we design the building or a part of the building, and we know that we've got multiple barriers, if we're using EZ-Path and we're ahead of the game on this by leaving pull strings within those EZ-Path, you could eliminate popping ceiling tiles at every single barrier. You could actually pull cable over a distance over multiple fire-rated assemblies without ever popping the ceiling tile. So think about the labor savings, think about infection control issues, all those things that can be achieved by doing this. It's a planning application, I get it, but we use this in many facilities and it works well. Can't use it everywhere, obviously, but if you know that there's going to be a lot of moves, adds, and changes over multiple barriers, this may be a great way to eliminate, having to find a tent to deal with infection or pop ceiling tiles, all those things we hate to do in our building. So based on the fact that EZ-Path costs a little more than conventional methods, we decided to create what we call an ROI calculator on EZ-Path. And this simple calculator, any of you can access this calculator on our website through Access STI. When you go into our website, go to the top right-hand corner, it says Access STI. You can log in and create your own account, then you have access to this. And if you don't agree with my numbers, you can plug in any number you wish, and based on your area of the country, what your labor rate looks like, all those types of things, and get a real good ROI of what EZ-Path would do for you over a 5- and 10-year period. And in this particular case, this is a screenshot using 100 EasyPath devices, based on capacity differences, you would need 125 twist sleeves to meet the same requirement. If you're using conventional methods, regular sleeves, where you only got 48%, obviously you're going to use double the amount, so you'd use 200. We have hours of installation. Again, if you don't agree with this, you could change this any way you want to. This is what we received from the field, from people that typically install these applications. And then you see down, we also have a labor rate, which we'll dive into a little bit more. The point being is, based on 100 applications, you can see to the far right a 5-year. You can look at EasyPath is at $92,500, $235,969 for twist sleeves over a 5-year period, $456,000 if you're dealing with steel putty sleeves. That's based on inspection, re-entry touches, all those things. So again, this is a real proactive tool. You can use it to, or interactive tool, I should say. This is what the labor cost looks like. Again, if you don't agree with $90, you could change that to $55, whatever the case may be. Number of re-entries per year. The typical Datacom contractor says that when they install something like this and they're the incumbent contractor in the facility, they plan on 4 re-entries in a year. That was pretty common across the board. Again, that you can change that any way you want to. You can even have a sliding scale here down the third down where it says 50%. You can slide that scale if you don't agree on what those percentage of re-entries would be. Cost per hour to inspect. If you're bringing in a third-party inspector to do your inspection at $65 an hour, again, a number that we achieved. You can change that if you want, on and on, all the way down through the process. Ongoing inspection costs per year, you can see that, all the way to the right, you can start to see what cost of inspections look like. And again, you can adjust these numbers any way you want to. It doesn't matter what you do. What you're going to find is that by installing EasyPath over time, you're going to put a lot of dollars back into your pocket, eliminate a lot of labor, a lot of cost. So the contractor going in sometimes will try to value engineer something like this out because it's not good for him because he's not coming back. But for you, you want to make sure you got a good handle on that. It happens to us all the time. So the bottom line, based on the criteria that I installed, you can see right here, the twist device over 5 years would cost you $1,000 more than EasyPath per device, $2,000 in 10 years. Sleeve and putty, $1,600 or $3,400. Pretty compelling argument. And again, if you don't believe me, log into Access SDI, play with that calculator, and I think that you'll see that there's no calculation you can come up with that doesn't give you a great return on investment for the process. Okay, let's talk a little bit about overfilled sleeves. So in the overfilled sleeve application, we talked about 48%. We devised a product we had out now for a little while. It's called a retrofit device. And the great thing about the retrofit device is it attaches right to the sleeve application. Once you do that, you can take that sleeve from 48% to 100% cable fill. So any of those sleeves that you have that are overfilled, this product would eliminate that issue for you right up front. It attaches right to the sleeve. If for some reason the sleeve doesn't protrude far enough from the opening and you can't grab it, you can see on that first one you've got little slots. Those are for legs that can attach right to this, so you can attach it right to the wall assembly. You don't even need a sleeve. It could be a hammer hole. This product would attach around that cable bundle and attach right to the wall assembly. I'm telling you, it's one screw and done. Great way to bring some of these cable penetrations that are non-compliant into compliance quickly and easily. This gives you a quick idea of what all of our UL systems look like in terms of EasyPath and what it looks like after a burn. The two on the left were 100% full, the one on the right 100% empty. And as you can see, they filled up completely. Drop ceiling issues, this is one I saw recently where they had used some sort of foam to try to eliminate smoke and achieve that smoke rating for the ceiling tile assemblies. This product is called NES. This is our non-rated EasyPath. So for those types of applications, this may be a cleaner way for you to manage cables. And we also have now manufactured the product in white, so it's aesthetically pleasing for ceiling tile applications. Great product. We move a lot of these. There's a lot of smoke-rated ceiling applications. May be a great way for you to be able to achieve that. We're now manufacturing this in a 4-inch device as well, so you can achieve more capacity. Construction joints, we talked a little bit about the fact that, the intumescent sealants, the red sealants, are not typically what you want to use there. The products you want to use there are typically going to be something that will allow for movement. We call it elastomeric. So be careful in your facility when using the red intumescent sealants that head a wall and joint application. We also manufacture a spray good as well as a new product called TTG. This is our top track gasket. This would attach right to the top track and be shot right to the floor assembly or the roof assembly above and would achieve your fire stop rating. Obviously a new construction type product, but I felt like it was important to bring this to your attention. We also have a new BIM application. So as your building is being, maybe a project is being constructed and they're using BIM during the process, this product comes right out of the Revit toolbar. So as clash detections are being identified, you would go to the Revit toolbar, hit the SCM button, and this would actually give you actual UL systems for every one of those clashes. Pretty cool. So for you general contractors on the call, feel free to give me a buzz on that. We can talk to you a little bit more. This is the product I was talking about. We're winding down. This is the last thing I wanted to bring up, the Fire Stop Locator. So I talked about the 3-ring binder version of how we, can manage, and document penetrations within our facilities. We can also do this by a virtual app. And this product, you would actually download your floor plan right into the system, and you would be able, just like a Google Maps type deal, you can move around in it, you can expand it, contract it, whatever, and once you place your finger on a location, it will open up a menu for you to be able to fill in basic information. The person that's the administrator of the program can see this live from his phone, from his desktop, from his iPad, whatever the case may be. It's a great way to monitor what's going on with that process, and it's very, very inexpensive process, a way to deal with this. So maybe this is something that you would, require of any contractor walking into the building, or if you're a general contractor, to be able to use this as an inspection tool and a quality control item, as the project's being built. You can go right to our website, again, sticfirestop.com, watch the video, get a very good tutorial on what that looks like, and if you need further information, you can sure contact me on that as well. Great process for being able to manage those documents. So this is how you win. Proactive approach. We can help you with the barrier management process. Standardization, that SOP I talked about. We can help you with the proper UL system requirements that will work in your facility and help you deliver a long-term sustainable facility. This is how you can reach me. If you have any questions or requests for me to come in and maybe talk with you further about what we can do. And again, our website, all these things I talked to you about are on our website, and I welcome you to come in and take a look at that. Okay, Son.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Let's go to the chat box. I believe we have a question. What is the clamp-on application for existing overfill sleeve? What is it called?
That is our EasyPath retrofit device.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. If anyone else has any question for Kelly, please type in the chat box, and we'll answer it right now. And I believe one of the attendee would like your SLP document, so we could get that out to all of our participants after. Is that possible, Kelly?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. All right, does anyone else have any more questions for Kelly at the moment? Okay, it looks like another person would like a copy of your SOP. So just to be on the safe side, Kelly, was it possible, we could send out all the documents here that you spoke about today?
Absolutely. Yep, I've got that available to you. You and I can talk about how we get that to the participants.
Sure, we can do that. Perfect. Okay, we have a question. Is there a 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 hour fire caulking?
So the sealant itself is not rated, so it has to do with the UL system. The intumescent sealant or the caulk that you're talking about would work in a 1 hour, a 2 hour, or a 3 hour. You just want to make sure that the UL system that you are dealing with on that you meet those requirements, excuse me, and have that data on hand. I can help you with that if you give me a call.
Okay. We have another one. Let's see. Is your spray-on application acceptable by NFPA and the Joint Commission?
It is. That product is an elastomeric water-based product, low VOCs in that. We use that in many facilities, but it is, we make that in a spray grade. We also make that in a caulk grade as well, but it's an elastomeric water-based sealant.
Okay. I have another one. Can you go into a bit more detail about the BIM tool?
Yeah, so we call it the Facility Clash Management Tool. When we decided to devise that, we wanted to make sure that we were working with Revit, which seems to be the tool of choice for dealing with BIM. So we wanted to be a part of the toolbar. So as a contractor, say a plumbing contractor on a project, and you're working in BIM, that contractor is being required to provide clash management. So, for instance, that's so that everyone on that project that's working within that barrier, that their pipes and conduits don't run together. So they're almost given like a dedicated area of the wall assembly. And let's say that the plumber says, I have a 10-inch steam line running through a block wall assembly, and he's got a 2-inch chilled water line running through a drywall assembly. As he identifies that and inserts that into the BIM, into the model, when you hit that Revit toolbar, everything that's been inserted into that clash management, it will automatically associate an object. You can drop an object right on the drawing, and it will also provide you with a UL system that would meet that requirement.
Okay. Have another one. Is there any video footage available for the product being tested that they could reference for?
Well, we do have. What I do have is I've got some screenshots and things like that. I assume you're talking about the UL burn assembly and how that works. Actually, I talk about that in that FIT training, and I have multiple slides that show what a manufacturer like myself and others have to go through and able to to achieve that UL rating. I could share some of that with you for sure.
Great, thank you. All right. It looks like that's all the question we have, and it seemed like there's a lot of interest in your SOP document. So I will work with Kelly on that to get that sent out after the webinar is done. As for the Lunch and Learn today, Kelly, thank you for your presentation. It was great and excellent. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any questions about anything you learned today, feel free to email Kelly or email Ashley, and then and items like that. Sorry, Kelly, any last words?
I really appreciate everybody spending some time with me today. Have a great week, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
All right, bye-bye.